Hi, book two, welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and the reason why you shouldn't rate a quantity, focus on a quantity of books you read, is because when you try to do a thumbnail, it's hard to hold all of them up, unless they're all audiobooks or something. Okay, so I read a lot this month. I was trying to, okay, that's just gross. I was trying to do, the Kaylee from Loomis Libro's challenge of 30 books in 30 days, and I still didn't meet the goal, but you know what? That's okay. It's all about the quality of what you read, and not about the quantity. It was just fun to see if I could do it. So, I read, of course, a lot of short stories. One short story collection I DNF'd. Well, actually two. I DNF'd. I think it was just two. Okay, so let's see, where do we start? Okay, I'm gonna put these down, because I do not have them stacked in order. I just hope they don't. I'm trying to put them down without them falling out of their pile. Okay. Alright, so let's see if I can find. Okay, well, that's good, because the first one on my list, because, I make the document and I have them in order when I finish them. So the first one I do not have in my possession because I got it from the library, and that was Concealed Don't Feel by Jen Calonita. This is a Frozen retelling from the Twisted Tales collection. They are basically a series of reiterations of the classic stories, the classic Disney movie stories, but it begs the question of what if this happened instead of this? Or what if these characters didn't meet or something like that? And in this one, you have the idea of what if Elsa and Anna never met? So in the story, they take the events of the book where, we get the beginning scene from the original movie, but when we get to the part when they go see the trolls because Elsa has accidentally struck her sister, she tries to stop them from erasing Anna's memories, but it messes with Grandpappy's magic to, alter things, so, and it forces them to be completely separated, and both their memories to be erased. So Elsa continues to live in the palace with her parents and training to be a queen, and trying her best to not to be emotionally numb so she doesn't lose control of her powers, while Anna is living in a town, in a little village not far. I think she lives up the mountain, in a village on the mountains or something, and where her adopted parents own a bake shop. And it's basically the plot of the movie, but it takes a bunch of different directions. Like, the characters meet in different ways. Like, Elsa is the first person who meets Olaf. She meets Hans first, and Hans gets the chance to actually pursue flirting with Elsa and trying to get her to marry him. And we do get glimpses of his own thoughts, but don't worry, it's only one chapter. And we see Kristoff and Anna meet in the village, and it's kind of the same, but it's also a little more. We don't see her ogling Hans and being like, I like Hans, and he's so handsome, and we're gonna get married and all that. It's like she doesn't, she's not caught up in the illusion of true love, in which I think the fact that she got raised with a different family in this village allows her not to be as naive when it comes to social norms, and she's still she's still naive and optimistic, and like, her personality didn't change, but she's a little more self-aware. Like, she, in this book, she figures out, she gets suspicious of Hans right away. And well, not right after she meets him, but he's not. It's just not. She's not as caught up in like, oh, it's true love. It doesn't matter his foot size or anything like that. And but the dialogue is almost exactly the same. It's just that there's different, like the scene plays out in a different way. So it was cute and fun, and I enjoyed reading it. And I think I would still consider looking at some of the other Twisted Tales, especially like for some reason I remember Cinderella sounding really interesting. And now I'm wearing a Beauty and the Beast because that one is very special. That one is my favorite, and it's very special to me. And I mean, I didn't like. I was already burned by what Once Upon a Time did with after their initial episode about the Beauty and the Beast storyline. After that initial episode, it kind of went in a direction I did not like, for in my personal opinion. But it was fun. It was a little lighthearted, and for nostalgia reasons, if I wouldn't say no to checking these out, but it's not like a masterpiece, and it's not like it didn't do anything really super new. It just went in different directions with the character stories. And the writing, like, I could tell I'm not the target audience with the writing style. It just was a little too simple for me. But, I was able to follow along with the story, so sometimes simple writing, I don't mean that in a bad way, necessarily. It's just, that kind of writing isn't for me. But I'm also not the target audience, so it makes sense that it's written the way it was. So it was cute, if you love Frozen, you might, want to check it out. Like, of course, you might already be checking out the Twisted Tale series. So, yeah, I got that one. So, that one was a borrow. Because, I wasn't sure if I wanted to get into the Twisted Tales and buy all the books. So, I just decided, I found out that my library carried all the books. So, I decided to, I think all of them. I don't know if it's all of them. Or at least the up-to-date ones. Because I'm sure whoever, that company, Disney Hyperion, is probably going to write more. Okay, so next, this is one of my DNFs. This, Unnatural Creatures. Now, this was one I thought would be perfect for October. A perfect thing to be reading in October because it's about, Neil Gaiman put together a bunch of stories, and he has some stories, I think one or two stories are by him, about all these supernatural, mystical creatures, different ones, so it kind of has a sci-fi fantasy feel to it. And the ones I read are, The Cartographer, Wasp, and the Anarchist Bees. That one was kind of confusing. It was hard for me to, get into that one. It was a little bit too, a little weird. Although it reminded me of a So Weird episode, that show from back in the 90s with the girl who had the connection to the supernatural and mystical world, and Aliens too. And there was one episode, and it wasn't the main girl from the series, but the last season, it was the girl from the last season, Annie. And there was an episode where her and the gang ends up at this little community town where they're actually bees, but they disguise themselves as humans. And things are not going well because the queen is caught up in her own thing and doesn't realize that her community is struggling. Okay, the Griffin and the Mire Cannon. I like that one. I thought that was really cool. It's like this Griffin finds out there's a likeness of him in a town nearby, so he flies to that town, but the townspeople freak out. And the only one who is willing to stand up and speak to the the Griffin is this minor canon, and he actually makes friends with the Griffin. But the townspeople don't trust this friendship and are afraid, and so they tell the minor canon to lure the Griffin away, but it kind of backfires on them. That one felt the most like a fairy tale. Ozimo the Wicked, that one was kind of cool. It was this girl who could talk to snakes. Was that one kind of reminded you of Chamber of Secrets, where when we first find out that Harry can talk to snakes? Well, actually, I should say not we, because we knew from the beginning that he could talk to snakes, but the rest, everyone, his friends in the school, all found that he could talk to snakes, and they were all afraid of him because they didn't know what he was telling the snake, because they couldn't understand him. And this one kind of reminds me of that, because this girl can talk to snakes, and of course snakes, because of the whole in the Bible, they say Lucifer takes the form of snake. Although I don't think actually it does actually say that Lucifer is the snake. I've never actually read the Bible. I just know the stories. So I don't know if Lucifer, but I remember someone telling me that Lucifer does not take the form, isn't the actual snake, but they just assumed he was the snake. Like, people just assume. So, they think she, worshipped the devil, and she's, evil and stuff because of her. So she's kind of isolated from her community. Even her own family disassociates themselves. But then she gets into the position where she can actually help them and save them. Okay, so the one that I stopped reading was The Sunbird, which I did not realize until the end of the story that the Sunbird is actually a phoenix. Or I might have realized in the middle. I know they at some point in the story they say like some people refer to the Sunbird as a phoenix. But it's about a group of people who eat a lot of unique things, and one of their members is bored and thinks, like, I've eaten everything, what do we do now? But then one of their members says, but there is the Sunbird that we could try. We haven't eaten a Sunbird before. So they decide to go hunting for a Sunbird. A Sunbird, not Sunburn. So that was the last one I read until I decided to DNF. I just wasn't excited to read these. I mean, I'm sure some of them are great, the rest of them. But with short story collections, it's like a hit or miss for me. Sometimes I like them, sometimes I don't. And, I think with short story collections, especially in the case of this one where it's various different authors' work, it was the same author, there's a better chance of liking them. Although the other short story collection I DNF'd, it was the same author, and I still decided to DNF it. But there is a better chance of actually liking them if it's the same author writing the stories. But this is an anthology of different authors, and it's just the common thread is they're all different unnatural creatures. Oh, and the other story I read, I don't know how to say the title actually, because it's just really an image, and there's like no title. I mean, even in the little beginning blurb, because each story, Gaiman wrote a little blurb in the beginning explaining what he loves about the story, when he fell in love with the story, and he mentions that the title is unpronounceable, and it's not because it's written in it's from a culture or a country or whatever that like. It's an image. It's basically, right there, that black line at the top, or that looks like a lifeline, that's the title. If you can see it, right here. This whole thing is the title of the first story. And it's basically a story of like this rich guy who is a big neat freak. He sees this black stain on his desk, and he tries to clean it up, but the moment he turns, he doesn't look at it, it gets bigger. it's really creepy, actually. And I think at one point it slowly consumes some of the people. It's like the Blob. It reminds me of the Blob a little bit. With or actually, you know what it reminds me of? It's like the in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 when we meet Peter Quill's biological father, and he's basically he's a whole planet, and he wants to basically reproduce and make everybody in his image. He's like, and can you say critique on Christian myth? And he basically towards the climax of the movie, he's trying to consume everybody, and he's this big creepy blob thingy that's like consuming everybody. I like that first one too. So the ones I liked out of the few I read, the ones I read were that one, Minor Canon, the Griffin and the Minor Canon, Ozima the Wicked. The only one, the Cartographer Wasp and the Anarchist piece, I didn't really care for that one. The Slow Burn was kind of interesting. So really the only one I didn't really care for. Although Ozimo and the Wicked, it wasn't my favorite, but I liked it better than the Cartographer Wasp and the Anarchist piece. Okay, so like I said, that's where I decided to summon DNF this, and it's been put in the donation pile. Because someone else might like it better than I will. And actually, I think I got it from the book roast. Okay, or the roast office, not the book roast. The book roast is the name of a channel on BookTube. Okay, and then, okay, so I find this one I didn't read. Well, I read most of it this month, actually. Or let me correct myself, because in case people get annoyed, I listened to it. And that is The Count of Monte Cristo. This is my copy. So, I've had this for a long time, even before I moved here. And when the first, 2018 or 19, I finally picked it up and started reading it. And I got pretty far into it. And then I put it down for a while and started reading it again. But it was going very slow. And then I hadn't picked it up for a long time, and finally I decided to listen to it on audio because I did like the story. I was enjoying it, but it's a lot. And the writing style can be a bit tedious at times, and there were moments where it's like, what does this have to do with the story? Is it relevant to the plot and to the conflict? It's, in case you don't know, which I think I would be surprised, this is about a guy, our title character, this guy named Edmond Dantes, who has a pretty good life. He has a great life. He, after taking the captain's place when he dies during one of their trips, his boss decides to promote him to captaincy, above this veteran crew member, and that makes him very bitter. He has this beautiful fiancée, Mercedes, from the Catalans, and unfortunately he has a competition. I mean, well, not really competition, because Mercedes doesn't really doesn't love this guy, but her cousin, Ferdinand, is in love with her as well and wants to marry her. And it's in their culture and their family, cousins marry each other. He is jealous that Edmund gets to be her husband. So these two, along with these two other guys, team up to frame Edmund for being a Bonapartist, and he's sent to the Chateau d'If, an island prison, where he meets another prisoner, a priest who I cannot pronounce the name, who teaches him all these different things, gets him an education, because I mean he's a sailor, so he doesn't have a lot of opportunity to learn, to get an education. And he comes up and he also helps him figure out who betrayed him and who were the ones that framed him. So after being in the Chateau for 14 years, he finds a way to escape and creates the identity of the Count of Monte Cristo while traveling the world. He also creates another identity, the Sinbad the Sailor, who was inspired from 1001 Nights. And it's all about him getting revenge on the people who betrayed him, and him like slowly, messing with their lives. And we see all these people in their lives while he was imprisoned, and see that they have families now, they have children, and see where Mercedes is, and she is married to Ferdinand, and they have a son. And it's just, there's so much happening in the story. It's so intriguing and engaging, such an engaging plot. I mean, so fascinating. Watch. You start out really understanding Dantes, and you just, think he's such a sweetie, maybe a little naive, but such a great guy. And then he is in prison, which I imagine prison can really destroy a man. Like, can potentially destroy someone, the goodness in someone. And just all of a sudden, and then you don't know what he's gonna do next. You get you get his basic plan, which is trying to ruin the lives of these people and get his revenge. But you don't know, it's hard to know what he's doing, what is part of what is part of his plan. But it's kind of fun to watch as the slow unraveling of the families, these people, due to his machinations, without them even realizing it. I mean, he even gets them to blame each other, in fact. And there's so many interesting characters, and not only do you see his broken relationship with Mercedes, but you also see his relationship with Mercedes' son, Albert, and see. And to me, that has a very interesting dynamic. Like, they respect each other and even develop a friendship, but and you see he becomes attached to, he cares for the children of all his enemies. He actually, because he knows it's not he realizes, I think in the back of his mind, he realizes it's not entirely their fault that their parents are assholes. It's just, I mean, I wish there was another adaptation that was, I did a video about this where I would have liked this to be a television show instead of just a movie, because you could explore so much. You could explore this whole series, I mean, I would be happy with the miniseries too, of course, but you could add so much more to the story and explore everything, and you wouldn't have to take out too much. Because even with a TV show, I think you have to change things. And there were some things in this book that might not translate well on screen, that not everybody would appreciate. I mean, if you really care about this and you are a fan that this has meant a lot to you, then, you might hope that they keep everything, of course. And I know some people would say that it shouldn't be adaptations because a lot of adaptations are bad, including that movie from 2002. Yes, I agree, that movie from 2002 was a bad adaptation. A bad adaptation. Let me repeat that. I do believe it was a bad adaptation. But I do have a soft spot because that was my first exposure to the story. And I am entitled to like one, even if it was a bad adaptation. I agree that it was a bad adaptation, okay? But I do have a soft spot for that version, yes, and I know it's disrespect. You know what? It's not a crime to like that adaptation, a bad adaptation. It's not a crime if I enjoy that adaptation, even if it was a bad one. I repeat, I agree it wasn't a good adaptation. It was not a good adaptation, but I still liked it, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But anyway, so in that video that in that video where I talked about this, about making a better adaptation. Okay, it's not, yes, I talked about that one because that was the one I was familiar with. I haven't seen the other ones. So I only had that one to talk about. Okay, but I do think that if they adapted this again, it would be a great TV show. Okay. Alright, next book. I'm doing these in the order I finished them. Okay, so next one I have finished is Dr. Thorne. This is one I started a while back. I think I started last year, and I decided to put it down and come back to it next. I thought about coming back to it for October, but I decided I just wanted to get it read. Because I wasn't sure if I was going to love it or not, and I enjoyed it a lot more than I did the first time. Which, it could have just been victim of bad timing on my part. But, like, maybe I read so much Victorian literature, I was, exhausted. Like, I was oversaturated with Victorian literature, and I decided I was ready to read something more modern or fantastical or something. But this is the third novel, I think, in the Barchester series. Barchester series. And I feel like it's not really about the title character, Dr. Thorne. This is the, like, I've seen this before where I've come across books, classic novels, older books that are, like, the title of the book, like, actually, it happened recently with The Old Curiosity Shop, which I also read that, and I will talk about that one, too, in a little while, but, where the title of the book, yes, it's part of the story, like, it's the name of a main character, or in the case of The Old Curiosity Shop, it's the name of where, the grandfather and little girl, the grandfather worked, it was his business, but the title doesn't feature heavily in the story, so I find that weird. But I guess you couldn't come up with I don't know what other title. To be fair though, I don't know what other title they would call these books. The ones, but Dr. Thorne, you have Dr. Thorne is a man who is raising his niece, who had a scandalous birth. Like, she was, like, born out of I think her parents, I don't remember if her parents were married. I think her mom was raped or something. I don't remember. By Dr. Thorne's brother. So he takes her in. He doesn't reveal her birth, right? He doesn't want anyone to know about her birth because it would ruin her. And the son of the heir of a rich family falls in love with his niece. And what is her name? What's her name? Let me see. Is in love with Mary and wants to marry her, but the family insists that he marries for money so they can keep their home and everything and their status. But he is determined to marry Mary, but Mary is trying to push him away, and because she knows he needs to marry for money, and it's basically that. They try to find an excuse to keep them apart a lot throughout the story. Mary tries to, like I said, push him away. In fact, she doesn't feel the same way she doesn't fall in love with him until later, until he matures, because at first, when he first proposes to her, she thinks he's very immature and just young, and he'll eventually forget about her. It's just a sweet little romance, and in this town, and there's less religious politics in this one as there was in the second one in Barchester. But there's less of it. But there's social politics in here, and I just was so frustrated with these characters, and because I think I kind of understand those kinds of rich people in these stories where, like, they're like, you should marry someone, like, again, are people who say you should marry someone with money or marry one of your own someone that's like you, I can kind of understand that to an extent where, like, you know, if you were born wealthy and had a lot of stuff and you're used to it, because it would be kind of hard to marry. It might be a challenge to marry someone that doesn't have as much money as you. It might, because you're so used to that high maintenance lifestyle. To all of a sudden marry someone, you know, like in an ideal world that wouldn't matter. Love conquers all, but I feel like it does. I feel like we don't live in an ideal world where it doesn't not matter. I think for a lot of people, it would, you know, you would try really hard to not let it bother you, but for some people it would. For a lot of people, I think it would, and you know, I mean, not like everybody. Like there are probably a lot of people that even if they're wealthy, would keep being marry someone that isn't wealthy, and be cool with it. You know, and now there's a lot of fairy tale historic romances where, like, a poor girl marries a rich guy and they live happily ever after. And it's not like the guy is gonna lose his fortune because of it. Which in this case, I think he was his grandfather's will or something was like, you have to marry for money or something, and you know he would lose his inheritance, something like that. I liked Trollope's writing style. His plot so far really interesting, although this was my least favorite. I still prefer Barchester Towers, that's what it's called, the second one, and The Warden. I still prefer those over this one. But there's more books in this series. There's, I think, 4 more books left, because I think there's 6 books altogether. But it was fun. I'm glad I finally finished it. Yeah. So, and then next was another one that it's just one that I finished, but I didn't read all of it this month. And that is East of Eden. This is not the edition I read from it, but East of Eden tells the story of it's kind of a retelling of the Cain and Abel story, where it starts off with these 2 half-brothers, Charles and Adam, and they are complete opposites of each other, and they have a weird relationship. They sometimes get along and they're polite to each other, but they can't, at the same time, they're not each other's favorite person. And they live in Sonales Valley, California, and they own a farm, but Adam escapes that rural life. He becomes a soldier in the war. I don't remember which war it was. And he falls in love with a woman that's a complete bitch. And just downright mean. And she is his Eve, I guess. Though more like if Lilith from the mythology, or see, I don't know if that is, because like I've heard of Lilith on Supernatural, and I don't know if Supernatural just made that up or if that is in Christian mythology, but maybe it's not in the Bible, I don't know. But supposedly she is in the mythology. She is Adam's first wife, but that didn't go well, and then Eve happened. So don't take my word for it. I don't know. Maybe it's just in the show Supernatural, but to me, Kathy is more like Lilith. How Lilith would be. But anyway, although every time I heard the word Kathy, I kept thinking about Kathy from Wuthering Heights, particularly the movie, with the Wuthering Heights movie, and I think it's Juliette Binoche who plays her. I think that's who I kept picturing for some reason. But she also, it's in the movie adaptation of this. It's not that. It's what is her name? She plays Claire's mom in Wedding Crashers. I can't remember her name. But anyway, So they have twin boys, and Kathy leaves him and becomes a prostitute, and ends up owning the prostitute business in the city. And Adam is raised to raise his twins on his own with the help of the Chinaman, who is his servant. And for part of the time, what is it? I cannot remember his name. Samuel Hamilton, who's an Irish farmer and has his own family, and we also get their story as well. We watch his family grow, and he has quite a bit of children, and we watch them grow up in their lives and how their lives intertwine with the Adams family, the Trask. And his kids are the Cain and Abel of the story. Caleb and Aaron are their names. And it's about their lives and how they also fight over a girl. like Charles and Adam did, except for Kathy is a manipulative bitch, and this girl, the girl that they fight over, is actually a nice girl, you know? She's not a bitch. So I really enjoyed this. I do want to reread this from the beginning at some point. It was so good, and, you know, the writing was great, and most classic authors I read so far, I've really enjoyed all of their writing anyway, so I don't know why I even talk about the writing, because I'm probably going to love it either way. But, yeah, it was such an interesting story, an interesting journey. The characters are so fascinating, like, so even Kathy with her hatefulness and her cynicism about the world and just thinking, and she kind of reminded me of Faith from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like, her Faith from the beginning when we first meet on Buffy, like how Kathy and Faith both have this cynical viewpoint of the world and think all men are idiots and beasts, that's all they are to them, and just think that they're all, you know, she thinks she understands them, and is just so, and when they surprise her, she gets pissed off, and I think, like, you know, it upsets Faith when she is surprised by a guy, when a guy actually surprises her as well. It's very enlightening for her. And now Kathy is just like, refuses to think of the possibilities, even though, you know, just gets mad about it. But yeah, this is really good. Oh, and the writing style is actually not just beautiful, but it's also easy to read. You know, it's not that hard to read Steinbeck. But he's also a more modern author anyway. So, well, not modern as in 21st century, but a modern classic author. Okay, so next, I read a bunch of short stories by F. Scott Fitzgerald. And this is the other DNF. So the ones I read this time around were A Short Trip Home, okay, The Bowl, it was okay, The Captured Shadow, Basil and Cleopatra, Bless the Bells, yeah, okay, that's it, Animated Majesty at Your Age, which The Captured and Shadow and Basil and Cleopatra is part of a group of stories in a series about this one particular guy, this young man, Basil. And I've come to the conclusion that as much as I love Fitzgerald's writing and I love The Great Gatsby, so far a lot of these are basically the same type of plot. Rich guy meets poor northern guy meets rich southern belle and falls in love, but they're different ways of living. There are clash, and, you know, can they make it work? They all kind of, which I understand, it's what Fitzgerald understood, it's what he knew, and like I said, his writing is amazing. It's just, it's kind of boring, because they all feel the same, all the stories feel the same, like, they don't feel any difference, like, there's no nuance. I feel like I'm kind of saying that when I write a review, it's hard to write, I feel like I can't write too much, because there's not a lot to say, and I feel like since I don't do star ratings, at least not on Goodreads, I feel like I have to say at least something, and I don't know what to say, you know, because I feel like it's the same thing. I'm repeating myself. Let's see, were there any ones on here that... Yeah, I think I read all the ones that I was familiar with. So I don't, you know, I mean, part of me feels a little guilty looking at it right now, but you know what, I'm gonna stick to DNFing this book and just send it back to the roast office, or send it to make an appointment with, at, what's it called, the Black Castle Books, which I need to do that soon. But unfortunately I have to call ahead of time. I have to call like at least 24 hours in advance to make an appointment, and it's kind of hard to do that when I don't know my parents' schedule and what their plans are. So, yeah, yeah, I don't really have much to say about all these. The ones, the last year I read from this collection, they were all okay, you know, but just nothing really special. I mean, you know, but I mean, if you really are a hardcore fan, you might want to check out this collection, you know. It's just, I'm starting to realize that maybe, you know, I hate to say it, but maybe it was just I love The Great Gatsby, but I don't know if I would love all the other ones. I'm still kind of thinking about reading The Beautiful and the Damned and checking that one out. But, yeah. So, okay, next is, and before I read after I read a short poem, before I read the other Fitzgerald stories, I also read some poetry. Which I wasn't sure if this could count for October. Grab it. But I decided to go ahead and read it. It had been sitting on my shelf for a couple months now, and I figured, let me give it a shot. And that was the poetry of Elizabeth Barrett Browning. I cannot remember her husband's name, but I have read poetry by him when I took a poetry class in college. These poems are really beautiful, and some of them do read like a story, like, let's see. But, I need to reread it because I don't know if I could tell you which ones I loved out of all these, because I did love some of them. I just don't remember them, which to some that might mean I don't love them. Autumn was really pretty, and it would obviously fit the season. Soul's Traveling, I think that was a long one. Consolation. I think The Cry of Children, I think I remember liking that one. I need to reread these because I don't remember all of them. But I remember enjoying these. But I think I need to take more time with these. So, and then I read the other short stories from Fitzgerald, which they captured the bowl, which is a story about football. By the way, if you like football, you might like that one. Captured Shadow, The Battle of Cleopatra, The Last of the Bells. Okay, and then after that, I decided to go ahead and read H is for Hawk by Helen MacDonald. So I heard about this book on Olive's channel, and she really loved this. She really loved this one, and I believe she has since read Helen MacDonald's other book, which I don't know it, but I know she wrote another bird book. But this is about a woman who, this is a memoir of a woman who, the author, who her father just died in the beginning of the book, and to escape her grief, she decides to raise and train a ghost hawk. And the one she has, she calls Mabel. And she talks about her experiences and how challenging it was. and the bond she shares with the Ghost Hawk, and they almost become one with each other, especially because she isolates herself with the Hawk. And she also compares her experience to the author T.H. White, who wrote The Sword and the Stone and The Once and Future King, and how from his experience, because he, in her eyes, he kind of failed, so she learns from that experience, and she also, like him, she projects her own pain and her own challenges onto this experience, as he does as well. Like, the author was a gay man, and he was ashamed of it, and hated himself, so he kind of used this to hide from that conflict, that inner conflict. And the same thing, her grief and the loss of her father, not wanting to deal with it, not knowing how to deal with it. Okay, and then after that, I read this one. Okay, so this one I don't have because I listened to an audiobook, and I decided to put the first book in the donation pile, even though I loved it, and it wasn't just okay, or I didn't like it, or I no longer interested. It was more like I just decided I'm going to get it on an audiobook at some point. But the second one, Muse of Nightmares by Laini Taylor, I finally read. I had finished the last one. I finally read and finished the last one last month, I believe. And the same with, and then, so I was able to get around to this one. Muse of Nightmares, the sequel, where it picks up right where the first one left off. And there's kind of a new antagonist in the second one. I mean, the first antagonist, Minya, is still a threat, but she's kind of out of commission in this second book, and we have a new threat we're introduced to, and with her own backstory and her own conflict. And of course, she's someone that has a dark past, and there's a reason she is the way she is and why she becomes a threat, which I really like. She was definitely an interesting and sympathetic antagonist. And you actually got to know her, unlike Minya, where you get bits and pieces enough to understand what happened. And we actually do get to explore what happened with Minya, why she is the way she is, why she feels so angry and so full of such a rage, and is just so power hungry and wants revenge and doesn't care if there's some nuances to the people down there, the humans. And which also we explore the powers of we actually get to, I don't know if we consider this a spoiler. I'll write a note and say there might be some spoilers from Muse of Nightmares. We explore Sarai's powers a little bit more in this one. We see different ways she can use her powers in this story. And we also get to explore, and then of course with what happens to Laszlo, we get to explore his new situation as well, and we get to see how he relates to both groups of people, like the god Sarai's siblings, and how the people down on Earth, down below, how they react to finding out what happened to him, seeing what happens to him at the end of the first book. And we also get the development. We get to see how what is his name? Mr. Golden Boy. I cannot remember his name. Theon Nero. We get to see how Laszlo's influence over him, and how despite his arrogance and kind of trying to dismiss Laszlo does get inside his head a little bit and influence him, and make Theon Nero start to see that he's kind of a jerk, and realize that people are worth caring about. So it's just we get more development and a lot more. And there's less traveling in this book, but kind of both groups stay in one place in this book, in separate places, but one group stay, the gods stay up in their little tower most of the story, and then except for, we continue the whole going into dreams and stuff, and um and sorry, my dog's doing something right now. I don't know if he's okay. Okay, he seems okay. While the people down below, they're, more like they're kind of stuck. They're staying here waiting because they don't know what's going to happen. They don't know how to handle what's going on right now. It was really great, a great sequel. And I feel like this duology probably does a better job with, like, I feel, from what, than the Six of Crows duology, where the Six of Crows duology spent a lot of time, with getting to know the characters through flashbacks and stuff like that, but, I think it forces it to be a little slower. While this one is edited in, I think this duology goes a little bit faster in the first book. Than Six of Crows and that duology. That's just my thought. And no, I probably, but although it's been a while, so maybe I'm wrong. But anyway, so I really like that, and like I said, I'm probably gonna at some point get Strange the Dreamer on audiobook. And I really like the narrator. He has a nice, buttery, soft voice, that narrator. I cannot remember his name, but he had a really nice voice, the guy who narrates those books. From the one I have, anyway. Okay, next is, as I said earlier, The Great Gatsby is one of my favorite classics. So I finally got around to reading this one. This is The Chosen and the Beautiful, by Ning Vo. I don't know, I'm probably not saying that right, but this is the Great Gatsby story told through the eyes of Jordan Baker, who in the story is one of Daisy's friends. She's not as, I feel like she's probably not as, she's not as rich. She's more self-made kind of person, and like, she's a pro golfer, so she didn't just inherit her money, she was already, well, although I guess, what is his name, didn't inherit, he was a self-made man too, but anyway, Tom Buchanan he had a company, I think, and it's her perspective on things. So we get a lot, so it's very interesting seeing her point of view, and it also develops a lot, we get more of Nick Carraway's relationship with Jordan, and how complicated it is, how complex it is. And we also see the complexity of her relationship with Daisy. And I think, and she is also Jordan is also queer. So I feel like there's a little bit more to Jordan's relationship with Daisy that meets the eye. And the love between them is a little bit uneven. But I think that's how Daisy is with everybody. With everybody she gives her heart to, I think. The way she treats Jordan. In fact, as another reviewer said, we get Daisy and Tom and Nick and Gatsby's personalities are heightened, I think, by Jordan's perspective in getting her point of view on everything. Because she sees things differently than Nick does. I think Nick sees everything, like, especially Gatsby, through rose-colored glasses. Now, of course, they both hate Tom. They both cannot stand Tom. But it also, seeing Gatsby through Jordan's eyes makes him a little even worse. Like, he's a pitiable figure in the original story, and you can sense that his relationship with Daisy is a little messed up, but it's not, you almost feel sorry for the guy. When this one, he seems a little bit more dangerous through Jordan's eyes, and scarier, like, even more of a threat. Because, you see his obsession, how bad it truly is. Because, like I said, Nick sees Gatsby through rose-colored glasses, I feel like. And I think the book implies at the end that Nick might be queer too. I'm not entirely sure about that. But there's a conversation between him and Jordan at the end that makes me think he might be queer too. That Nick might be. I'm not 100% sure on that. But, it's just, I feel like the conversation made me a little suspicious and think that maybe he was gay too. We also get a little bit of touch of fantasticism, like a little bit of magic. Like, Jordan she's Asian American, she's Vietnamese, and she was taken by a white woman to America, who did it as a way to protect her and save her, but all of that that's a bit questionable. It looks more like it might look more like she stole her. So, and there's a big Vietnamese population, even a big Asian population. We don't really see her. Jordan doesn't interact with them that much. But it's a very interesting dynamic when she does interact with them, because she's not exactly one of them. But as you know, she's seen as very exotic and strange among all these white rich folks. But then among them, she's nothing really special among people of her own culture. And I think she kind of prefers being exotic and special, rather than being another person, another Asian woman, another Vietnamese girl. But they do have little bits of magic where people can do certain things, and one of those things is paper folding. It becomes like you can bring it to life, and I didn't even realize that there was a little bit of fantasy until I looked at one of the reviews and was like, oh yeah, wait a second, there was. Like, there's one point where to make a Daisy happy, a Daisy who's upset, and, she folds a lion, and creates a lion out of paper, and I think it does come to life. I mean, I don't know why, the magic totally went over my head. I guess because I'm so used to the fantasy genre. I read a lot of fantasy, so if it's a little subtle, I don't always notice it. That's the only thing I think of, because I totally, it slipped my mind, I didn't even notice it. And there's magic elements. And like I said, so not only do we get to explore the characters more and expand on them, but we also, like I said, we get a queer main character, and she's not only queer, but she's Asian American. So it was such an interesting look at the original story, and it was like, oh, it's very, and then adds more to Fitzgerald's story, which I don't know if you would like it or not. I think because sometimes when people do this kind of stuff, especially if the author's an older author, you gotta wonder how would they really feel about it. I mean, it's the same thing with, I'm one of the few people who actually loves the Hobbit movies. I mean, I understand why some people are, don't really like them and downright hate them. But it's interesting to think about. I know that Tolkien's grandnephew was not happy with the movies. It's easy to say, oh, Tolkien probably won't be happy either, but, you gotta wonder. But anyway, with this case, I'm curious, I wonder what Fitzgerald would think of this, as a man from the 20s. Because, they're in the 1920s, there were still things that weren't as okay. I mean, this book, proves it, that there were some things that just weren't as acceptable. It's a quick read. I wish they had gotten a chance to explore more, and I almost wish they went beyond the Great Gatsby story, because I feel like there's a lot of things that were I wish they had gotten a chance to explore those more. But because the author was sticking close to the original novel, just adding stuff, she didn't really get to go beyond the basic premise, but with some nuances to it. And I really wish she could have. But I understand, this is a beloved classic. And she doesn't know which people would be okay if she did that. Maybe not everyone will be okay with that. But yeah, this was great fun. Okay, so next one is another one that I don't have a copy of it. So I started reading it as a book, but then, as I mentioned before, my book fell apart. and I ended up having to, and I threw away my copy because it was like I was not going to give it to someone else. The pages were literally coming out of the binding, so I was not gonna, and I didn't know how to fix it, so I was not gonna give it to anyone else. I threw it away and got a 99-cent audio version of it, so I listened to the rest of the book via audiobook. The Curiosity Shop, I don't think it's not my favorite Dickens. It's cute. I like it better than Hard Times. Hard Times was just downright depressing. But, and it wasn't even depressing in a funny way. Sometimes there's depressing stories that can be kind of fun and enlightening. Like, Les Mis is mostly depressing, but it's still, like, interesting. And you're exploring interesting characters. But this one, the relationship between Nell and her grandfather is really sweet. I will say that. And Dickens does good with side characters, secondary characters. His secondary characters are always intriguing and fun and interesting. But basically, if you don't know, this is the story about a grandfather and an old man and his granddaughter. The grandfather owns a curiosity shop, but he has a bit of a gambling problem, and he gets into a lot of debts. And one of his debtors is this creepy dude named Mr. Quilp, who's described as a dwarf, and he takes their store from them. And Nell convinces her grandfather they need to run away. So they go traveling through the English countryside and meet various different people. Some people make her grandfather's gambling problem worse, exasperated a little bit, and then there were people that kind of make friends with them and help them out in a positive way. Like I really like Miss Jarley. She was really fun, and really like spunky, and she was a character that made waxworks, and was a traveling saleswoman, and she was really cool. I liked Kip, who was a friend of Nell's, who I think he was pretty much infatuated with Nell. Even, a potential love interest for him. He keeps comparing Nell to her and is like, you'll love Nell. She's great. She's so beautiful and so angelic. And meanwhile, the girl's sitting here being like, yeah, thanks. I like you, and you keep talking about another girl. That makes me feel so great. So first off, I didn't like Nell's character. I feel like she was like, this is the same problem I ever ran into with Oliver Twist, where our main child protagonist is so angelic and so goody-goody. It drives me nuts because it's like no kid, especially at her age. She's 13 years old. No 13-year-old is that goody-goody, I mean, she's admirable that she's really there for her grandfather, and she's still just a kid. But at the same time, even though it's admirable and the relationship is really sweet, it just annoyed me. I just couldn't stand her. Because, like, the 13-year-olds I've known that I've been friends with are not that good. Not goody-goody. Although I don't know, Oliver might be worse. Oliver Twist might be worse. But, and then also there's the whole thing about Mr. Quilp. He's described as a dwarf. And, there's a great video by Katie from Books and Things, who discusses disability in Victorian literature. And Dickens has a lot of disabled characters, especially in his early works, who are bad guys. I still liked the character, but I can understand what she was talking about when I watched a review of her talking about the book. And how Quilp's characterization is a little questionable and can be seen as a little offensive. I also like Dick Swiveller. He's a friend of Nell's brother. And so you think he's going to be the dumb sidekick. But he's actually, he develops quite a bit throughout the story to actually be really likable and charming and funny, and he actually becomes a good guy by the end of the story. Of course, there's the beautiful descriptions of the English countryside, and it's a beautiful story, and, but there are problems with it. you know, there are things I don't like. There are a lot of things I don't like about it. So I wouldn't, it's not my favorite so far. I still don't know if, like, I guess David Copperfield and Great Expectations would be at the top of the list so far. I don't know. I really have to think about it. The problem with Dickens' books, a lot of times his books are so dense, even the shorter ones, that, you know, there's so much that, you know, unless I read them twice, back to back, I won't remember them as well. I mean, even with A Tale of Two Cities, you know, rereading it reminded me of stuff that I had totally forgot. Like, or at least I need maybe a few months in between readings or something. I don't know, but there's just so much characterization and so much plot that I barely remember some of them. But I just remember the feelings that they gave me. Okay, the next one is I read quite a few short stories. This collection I definitely liked better than Fitzgerald's collection. This is selected works of Edgar Allan Poe. This edition. I like these World Classics flexi-bound editions. And I think I'm gonna appreciate Poe's stories more because there's more variety in them. He can get more creative, I feel like, with his works. Like, I think it's easy to get creative and write different types of stories with the fantasy and sci-fi genre. I feel like you can explore it a lot more and have fun with it. Like, so far, each of the stories is different. The only thing that they have in common, which, I mean, is disappointing with the natural creatures, and maybe I should give another shot, but I feel like I don't like going back on my, you know, when I put a book in the donation pile. I mean, I think about it, but mostly I try to not change my mind and just keep them there until the next time I go, the next time I get a chance. But I have read MS in a Bottle, The Assassination, The Visionary, Bernice, The Unparalleled Adventures of One Han Fell, Legia, William Wilson, and The Fall of the House of Usher. MS in a Bottle had potential, but because it was a short story, I feel like it was very limiting. Like, I feel like I was just dropped in the middle of a story, in the middle of the action, like in the middle of the climax. Is this guy was on a ship, and, you know, they were traveling, he was trying to get to know, explore the crew, and he was writing about it, you know, and then they get caught in a storm or something. So it was just like, you know, like I said, I felt like I was in the middle of the action. So I feel like it had potential, but it just missed something. I barely remember the next one. I'm just gonna call it The Visionary, because I don't know how to say Assignation. I don't remember that one. Bernice, I think that one was the one where the guy, oh no, that was Laini. I can't remember that one. The Unparalleled Adventures of One Han Fell. That was kind of boring. It kind of was like the situation with 20,000 Leagues Under the Seas, where I was all excited because it was an adventure kind of story. It's meant to be an adventure story, and then all it is like this guy narrating what happened, what he's experienced. But the problem is, even though I find scientist characters really interesting, it can also have a tendency to be boring. Because they're just they're being technical and writing the facts. It is a little bit more exciting than 20,000 Leagues Under the Seas. Because a bit more happens. But he's basically on a hot air balloon sailing across around the world in 80 days. And he's studying the atmosphere, and unfortunately, he has some animals that he sacrifices. I did not sacrifice like sacrificing to the gods, but uses them in his experiments, and I did not like that. So there was some animal cruelty. I did not appreciate that one. So other than that, that one was kind of boring. And then Magia, I really like that one. It's this guy talking about his first wife he loved so much. She's so beautiful and perfect. He loved her, but then she dies, and he gets married again, and they hate each other, him and his second wife, and he's haunted by his first wife. And then William Wilson was interesting. And I think it's about a fear that a lot of us could potentially, like a fear that has been before, an evil twin scenario where our main character, while he's away at Oxford, he meets his twin, his exact copy, and at first he's okay with it, but then he starts to get annoyed, and he gets paranoid about the situation. And even when he gets away from Oxford, he feels like this guy is stalking him. So that was interesting. That was an interesting story. And then The Fall of the House of Usher, that was one of the ones I heard about before. But I was kind of bored. I was kind of disappointed. It was kind of boring. It was like this guy goes to visit his friend. Well, actually, it's more like MS in a Bottle, where it had potential to be interesting, but then it deflated for me. It's this guy go visit his old friend, who I think he's dying. I think his friend is dying, and the sister's ill and also dying, I think, and he talks to him, and the guy talks about their family's downfall, the Usher family's downfall, and I don't know what happens. They're just talking. I mean, they do encounter the sister. She's kind of sleepwalking mode, and but yeah, that was a disappointment. That was one of the ones I was intrigued by, and maybe because it was a short story. Like I said, it feels like it had potential. Like I wanted to know more about the characters. The sister and the Usher family sounded really intriguing and interesting, and I would love to learn more about them. And so like with MS in a Bottle, I feel like it had so much potential and so much more to explore, but it just even more so than MS in a Bottle, and it just so it was just a bit of a letdown. So that's what I've read so far of that collection, and I like it better than the Fitzgerald collection. Okay, so that was the last thing I read, was The Fall of the House of Usher, but before that, I finished this one, The Glass Magician, by Caroline Stevermer. I think that's how you say it. This is one of the ones I bought from. It's a 2020 publication, and I read this. I got this at the little bookshop in the Southern Pines, and it wasn't that long, and I was still interested in the story, so I figured, why don't I go ahead and read it. This takes place in New York, 1905, and our main character is a magician. But she gets fired from the theater that she's performing at because of another competition magician has put a clause on his tricks so that no one can do a trick similar to his. And it turns out they decide to do that. And so her and her manager and / guardian decide to investigate and get revenge and get back at their competition. Try to, So, although that is kind of more of a secondary plot, the actual plot is our main character, Thalia, discovers she is not, she is a traitor, basically a shapeshifter. In this world, you have solitaires, which is what she thinks she is, which I think are the non-magic people. Traitors, which are basically shapeshifters, and Sylvestri, which are kind of like when they talk about them in the book, I think of the elves, like the Lord of the Rings elves, particularly the elves from Mirkwood, like Legolas's family, and all her life thought she was a traitor. I mean, all her life she thought she was a solitaire, but during the performance, it is revealed to herself that she is a traitor. She can shapeshift. And there is a mysterious manticore. Yes, a manticore. That will hunt down traitors and steal their magic. So, when the manticore, she meets this man and his sister, this man named, what is his name? I can't remember his name. What is his name? Let's see if I can. I can't remember his name. It's gonna. I cannot remember his name, but it will pop in my head at some point. This man whose sister is getting ready to take the test to be a legal adult trader, but she also wants to be a magician, and he kind of looks down on that profession, so he thinks that Thalia can talk his sister out of wanting to do that job. Of course, it backfires, and Thalia becomes friends with her and starts teaching her magic. While she is attacked by the manticore at the time, and they decide, seeing that she is actually one of them, they take her in to offer her protection. And the guy teaches her how to trade, while she teaches his sister how to do magic. So it's like the magic plot is there, but it's more of a mystery, and you get more of the illusion magic than the actual magic in the story. But there is a hint of romance, but nothing really comes of it. Like, it's just, hands touching kind of thing, like, and looking at each other, and then the characters realizing, I actually don't hate this person, I actually kind of like this person, but there's no actual romance. So if you're one of those people who does not like romance taking over the plot, you don't have to worry with this one. I feel like the magic was underdeveloped. Like, I feel like there was so much more to be. I just realized on this cover, in the wings, there's eyes. I did not realize that. But I feel like the magic needed to be explored more. The magic system, like with the Sylvestri, I wanted to know a lot more about them. Like what their deal is. Like I said, the only thing I figured is that they're like the elves in Lord of the Rings. And I wasn't sure if the solitaires meant people, regular people, or did they have any magic whatsoever, or maybe they just saw magic, but they weren't magical themselves. I could not figure that out. The characters were definitely interesting. With Thalia, she kind of reminded me, if you've read the Libba Bray's, I can't think of what it's called. That one series that took place in the 20s, I can't think of what it's called. With the character of Evie O'Neill. Like, Thalia kind of reminded me of Evie O'Neill a little bit in her personality. Although I think Evie was a little more of a reckless character than Thalia was. Thalia was a little more cautious, I think. And I am someone who likes romance. I'm not like, I don't, my feelings of romance, I go back and forth. Sometimes I want it and sometimes I don't. In this case, I wish they explored the romance. I was expecting more for the romance aspect of it, but I feel like we didn't get a lot of it. We just got teases and hints of it. But it wasn't as explored in this book. So I was a little disappointed. It is a fast read, so you get through it quickly. Although the chapters are kind of long, but there aren't as many chapters. There's only 17, actually. So it was entertaining, but I did want a little bit more I did want more from this book than what I got. And I would love for the author to, it is, like, as of right now, it's a standalone, but I would love the author to write more in this world. So, it doesn't necessarily have to be a direct sequel, but just explore this world more. and at least reassure me that Thalia and her love interest would potentially get together. I'd love to know that. But anyway, yeah. So I wanted more of the magic, more of the romance. And there was another character that kind of had an ending that was a little like ambiguous, at least to me anywhere, where it's like you don't know where he was going to go from there. Which I think sometimes ambiguous endings are okay. That's fine, but like I just feel like there's a lot more to explore in this story than what we got, and I would love the author to continue it. So that was the last book I read and finished, other than The Fall of the House of Usher. And since then, I have been reading. Okay, I don't have it with me, but I started reading Our Mutual Friend for Victober, and I need to start reading a little bit of Brothers Karamazov. Now that's not Victorian literature, obviously, but I want to start reading that one. And then let me go ahead and show you what I got, what the last books I got before the month ended. Okay, so let's see. These are all the books I got. Okay, so first, the two books I got from the roast office they're kind of risky. I didn't know, well, I did read the back, of course. So I'm going to just read the back description because I couldn't remember enough to tell you offhand. But this energetic and hilarious novel is made even more important by the current final thawing of the long communist winter in Czechoslovakia, moving between 1948, which normally that is, normally I'm not, because I hear so much about World War II that, it's like, I want to read some different time period, but because it's not about World War II, I feel like, or like it's a portion of World War II that you won't hear about. But moving between 1948, when our hero, Danny Smirky, falls asleep in the church while a miraculous event occurs, and in 1968, when he observes the miracle Prague Spring. The miracle game is a sharp look at strange, sad, and silly things people do to survive. So, interesting. A little different. It kind of made me think of The Physician a little bit, where it takes place in part of the world that I don't know a lot about. I mean, I definitely learned more about it lately, but so this title always intrigued me. It kind of reminded me of Roald Dahl's writing style. So Sam and Henny Pullet have too many children, too little money, and too much loathing for each other. As Sam uses the children's adoration to feed his own voracious ego, Henny watches in bleak despair, knowing the bitter reality lies just below his mad visions. A chilling novel of family life, the relations between parents and children, husbands and wives. The Man Who Loved Children is acknowledged as a temporary classic. So that one sounded interesting too, and like I said, the cover reminded me of Ronald Dahl work. So I've always kind of been drawn to it the last couple times I've been to that bookstore. So I finally decided to buy it. Plus there wasn't anything that I was super excited to buy, which that happens at that bookstore. It's a little risky there. So that's why I got the roast off, and then these last three are ones that I got at the Books A Million. So this one I got, it was a little bit more expensive, so I just got the one. This is the third book. Actually, I may have already talked about this, so I apologize if I have. But the third book in the Wheel of Time series, because I wanted to get these particular editions, but it's kind of hard to get access to them. Like, if I try to get them on thrift books, they disappear really quickly. Luckily, I was able to find them on Amazon. So, this is not an Amazon purchase, though. This is actually a thrift books purchase, now that I think about it. but I did put them on my Amazon wish list because I want to get these particular ones with this cover and this size book. So this one I think was on a Thrift Books purchase. So I cannot remember if I got this one or, yeah, it's a Thrift Books. You can tell by the tag. I can't remember what the other one I got with this one. So I think I'm pretty sure I showed this one to you guys. This is the third book. Oh, it might have, no, Brothers Karamazov by itself. But this is the third book. I'm really liking the series so far. Now I've finally started reading the second book, although I put it down for a little while. I have it right here, Great Hunt. And I would like to go to Books A Million and get the first one and the fourth one in this edition as well, as soon as I can, which may be today, since it's October 1st. But, so I think I've already showed you guys this one. Like I said, everyone's after that series. Oh, I think this was where I got this book with that one as well. The, Dreadcool. So I'm pretty sure I have showed you guys this. I've showed this one a couple times, actually. So yeah, I think I got those two together. Okay, so the ones you have not seen. So first we have Salem's Lot, which I read this years ago, and I had a mass market copy, so I decided to get a copy that was not mass market, get this copy, and this is the same as the Stand. I think this is the same as the Stand, and I think when I originally bought Revival, which I got rid of, I donated because I thought that was just okay. It was interesting, but it was not my favorite of King's works. But I think this one, unless I'm just thinking about the one I saw at the store, but I think this cover matches The Shining and The Stand. I think this is the same publishing. It's like the same, the covers are the same kind of material, and the writing, the style of writing, the typography of the title, and the author's name, and the writing inside are the same. So I think this is the same publisher as my copy of The Shining and The Stand. And the coloring on the cover is also the same, particularly of The Stand. That like sickly green color. So this is actually would work if I continue to pursue my Dracula theme this month. This kind of would go with it because it's the idea of Dracula in modern day suburbs. So yeah, so there's that one. I got that. And then the other Stephen King book I bought was Bag of Bones, which I think this cover particularly matches my copy of It that I bought. It's, again, similar typography. This is about a writer who's grieving his wife who had died a few years ago. So it's similar to Lissy's story, except that the one who lived, the spouse who lived, is the writer in this case, and he goes back to their lake house where they used to visit every summer, and I believe there's ghosts involved, and there's a boy and his mother who are being targeted, and I want to say abused or something. I remember seeing the movie adaptation starring Pierce Brosnan, but I don't remember the whole. It's been a long time, and I don't think I watched the whole adaptation. But yeah, so I decided to buy that one as well. Okay, so that is what happened. My wrap up for September. So if you guys, so I hope you guys like this video. Be sure to give a thumbs up. Click subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell notification below if you want to be notified when I post new videos. And I hope you are enjoying your reading. And I will talk to you all later. Bye.